All right, so quick story to start with. A few weeks ago, I was at a 3D conference in Sydney, and at the conference, it was probably 90% students, 18, 20 somethings milling around. And we were watching a presentation on GPU rendering and why it's so awesome. And one of the students put up their hand and they asked the guy giving the presentation, they said, "What graphics card do you have at home?" And he said, "I run dual Titan X's." And all the students in the audience just erupted. They were like, "Whoa, say no more." They were just ecstatic that he could have that, dual Titan X's. And the guy waited for a second. And then he said, "I'm concerned with your reaction to that because the cost of those cards in the grand scheme of things is very small. Because they will enable me to do a lot more, a lot faster. So the cost of those cards doesn't matter." And I loved his point, and I totally agree with it. And it's something that I learned the hard way many years ago. But I also know that most of the students in that audience probably it just straight over their head. They didn't quite get where he's coming from. They'd be like, "Yeah, but 2000's 2000, So I wanted to talk in this video why spending $2,000 on graphics cards or $500 on an online training course or even $200 on a plugin is not only acceptable, but in some cases, if you're not doing it, you're actually shooting yourself in the foot. Because I've noticed a bit of a like pride of people, especially in the Blender community, but not exclusively, but a pride of people wanting to do things for free, Like, they'll be like, "Ha! Look at all those people out there paying for this expensive software, and yet here I am doing it all through sheer tyranny of will, figuring it all out myself," And there is a time and there's a place for that, and we'll talk about it in this video. But I wanted to give lip service to the other side, the side that's not talked about that often, and that's when and why should you pay for something as opposed to choosing a free option. And yes, elephant in the room, I sell a lot of products online, and several of them are what you would call high price value. But that's not why I'm making this video. I'm making this video because anytime you see a plugin released from Video Copilot or a course from CG Cookie or a model pack from Grayscale Gorilla, there's always someone in the comments going like, "it's a ripoff. You can get this for free online," So I wanted to talk specifically to that topic. All right, so I want you to imagine, if you will, that there's a course that appears online, a character creation course made by somebody in the industry, but it's going for $200. Okay, now one guy looks at it, this guy right here, and he says, $200. I know what that's called. That's called a ripoff, because there are plenty of free tutorials online. I'm not paying $200 for a character course. Why would I do that? I can just go on YouTube. Okay, let's call him Freebie Freddy. And we've got another person. He looks at the tutorial series and he says, "Sure, why not? I'll pay it." Let's call him Gets It Greg. Now, let's have a look at what happens to both of these people. Okay, so Freebie Freddy, what does he do? He goes online and he finds exactly what he expected. A whole bunch of different tutorials. They're all free. They're all on YouTube. He's like, "See, why would I pay money for this?" So he finds the one that's got the most number of views and he starts watching it. And at the end of watching the whole series, he's got a character. Awesome. Look at that. However, he has some problems he can't solve. There were several parts of the tutorial where he got stuck. He didn't know what the tutor did, or he pushed something on his keyboard and suddenly his mesh did something funny. He doesn't know how to reverse it. So now he's got some weird little glitching problems on the arms and the seams around the legs. He's also got like the material for the jeans is sort of spiking up, and he doesn't know how to fix these problems. He asked for help in the comments, but nobody replied, and he's sort of stuck. So he doesn't know how to fix those problems. He's got a character with issues, right? But worse still, and the reason this is even worse is that you don't even realize this because you don't know, but sometimes if you're following a free tutorial series online, you can adopt a poor workflow, because sometimes you're learning from a tutor who, is sharing their knowledge, which I commend, of course. But sometimes they're teaching a method which is either outdated, there's better options or better tools available, or they're teaching something which is incorrect. So you can learn a poor habit, like maybe they won't put enough emphasis on topology, or they'll teach you box modeling instead of sculpting, or a whole number of things which are really important. And so you'll learn a bad workflow by following them. Obviously, some better than others, but that's just the way it is. Sometimes I watch some of my old tutorials and I'm like, ooh, boy, that's embarrassing. I can't believe I showed that step, because just in different levels of experience, there's different way of doing things. Okay, so that's Freebie Freddy. All right, now let's take a look at Gets It Greg. So he paid the $200 for the professionals course, and at the end of it, look at that. He's got a model which looks remarkably similar to the one from the course. Best of all, he was able to learn a professional's workflow, because the person who made this tutorial series is somebody that works in the industry. They've got a lot of experience making characters. He learned the professional's workflow. He learned the most important steps. He knows that anatomy is important, and topology is something that you fix after you do the sculpting. He learned all these important things because the person who was teaching it pointed it out. It wasn't just a point, a point and click, not point and click, like paint by numbers, like follow me, follow this step. It was actually explained why you're doing something. So he understands now the fundamental reasons behind what he's doing. And best of all, the places where he got stuck, he was able to email the tutor, because that was included in the course, some email feedback. So parts that he got stuck, he got fast replies the next day, which was really helpful for his motivation. Now let's progress 1 month forward. Freebie Freddy. He's now going to have a go at creating a new character. Now he's created one character, he's going to make his own second character. However, since the original tutorial was a paint by numbers, where it was like, okay, just follow me, click here, now we're going to turn this on, now we're going to check that box, turn that off. He didn't learn the reasons why you do something. So when he was trying to create a new character from scratch, he doesn't know how to do it. He's stuck. He's like, well, what am I supposed to do? If I'm not creating a cowboy, how do I make an alien? So he's sort of like in this place where he doesn't know how to progress. But worst of all is now that he's created this second character, he spent all this time on it, he posted it online, he's not getting very much feedback, because the pro artists, they're not having a look at his work, because it's such at a beginner stage that there's a certain level where you're required to be before people start giving feedback. So the only feedback he's getting are from other beginners, people saying like, hey, great work, which isn't very helpful for him. So he's lost a lot of motivation. 1 month later though, you've got Gets It Greg. So he now has a go at creating his own character from scratch, which isn't fantastic. He knows it's got problems, but when he posts it online, he's able to get feedback, because people that are above him, they can see like, hey, this guy gets it. He's making progress. I can see that he's taking learning seriously. I'm going to give him some feedback. So his motivation is high, and now he can move on to his next project. All right, now let's fast forward to the end of the year. Let's just see where they all get after 1 year. So Freebie Freddy, he creates one more character after that. He really puts himself on the line. He goes into all this detail. He makes fingers, he makes toes, hair, whole bunch of all this stuff. But he can see that it's not great, because he knows what great looks like, and he knows that he's not quite there yet. And when he posts online, he's not getting very much feedback, and he has lost a lot of motivation. And that's so crucial when you're learning something. You spend all this time making a character, you want feedback. You want somebody to at least say like, hey, the 14 hours that you put into that, great job. That was time well spent. You're getting somewhere. But he's just not getting that, and it's really taking a toll on him. On the other hand, you got Gets It Greg. So he was able to progress from one character after the other. He made the little gray one, then he made the blue guy crouching, then he made this little Bioshock character, and a whole bunch of different characters after that. Each one he was able to get feedback from people that were above him, offering feedback and advice to him. So that kept his motivation high. He's learned all the right things, and he's now on his way to success. So remembering at the start, you had Freebie Freddy, who saved money up front. But what came with that was that he learned the incorrect workflow without even realizing it. He made errors that he couldn't solve, so he didn't even have a finished mesh that he could be proud of. He remained stuck in many places, and he kept hitting these brick walls where he had to ask for help online and then wait for days before anybody replied. And worst of all was that he lost motivation to continue, which is so important when you're learning something. Motivation, you could almost say, is the most important thing while you're learning. Keeping that high enough so that you keep going and you keep learning. So because of that, he only finished 3 models in an entire year. And he's really not seeing the point in continuing anymore, because why spend all this time going through pain and spending hours on something when you're not really seeing any feedback? Worst of all, at the end of all this, he doesn't have any job opportunities. He doesn't really have anything that he can go to next. He's sort of stuck. Then you've got Gets It Greg, who up front, he spent money. He lost $200. However, he learned the correct artist workflow because the person he learned from was somebody in the industry. He learned the key important areas to work on, the anatomy, the topology. He learned all that stuff that's so important. So he was able to use that in his own creations. He got feedback from artists above him because they could see that he was making progress and they wanted to help him. He now has a high motivation to continue, which is so vitally important. So now he's like addicted. He's like, I'm going to keep learning. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this. And he's just leapfrogging from one to the next because now he's on a roll. It's sort of snowballing. So he was able to finish a massive 7 models in the year, which was absolutely fantastic. And because of that, because he was posting them on ArtStation, he's now actually got a few freelance offers. So a few companies have seen his characters online and they're like, hey, can you make a little mascot for our bank or something like that, It's not big jobs, it's not a lot of money, but it's a few little jobs that he can now earn a little bit more cash, maybe even buy a few more courses in the future. Okay, now remembering, so Freebie Freddy, let's say, for example, he says like, yeah, well, how am I supposed to get money? Like, I don't have a job yet. Okay, well, assuming that you're at least the minimum age to get a job. The minimum wage in America is $7.25. Apparently, I Googled it, that's what it said. Well, if you worked for 3 days, that would pocket you approximately $200. Okay, so remember, if you didn't have a job, if you went and got a job and then worked 3 days, you would be exactly where Gets It Greg, because you would be able to purchase that course and all you would be 3 days behind him. Okay, just 3 days, as opposed to years apart, which is what they are right now. So essentially, you saved 3 days up front by not having to do manual labor. But then in terms of progress, you're years apart. Okay, so it's like 3 days versus years of extra work and pain and just, yeah. A lot of the time you think like sitting at the computer, like, oh, that's what I do anyway, that's all I'm going to be doing. But just extend it, like include the motivation and all this stuff. You don't see this. Like when you often see a course online, you think like paid versus free. Obviously, I'll choose the free. Remember that there's often a lot more that can go with it. And by the way, if you're looking at this and you're like, okay, Andrew, but I can't get a job yet because I'm only 14 or 13 or whatever. Well, guess what I did when I was 13? I went and did car washing. I really did. I went and put pamphlets out in the neighborhood, said, I will wash your car. I actually charged them $3, which just makes me cringe to think about it. Like all the people that were like, $3 to wash my car? Yeah, go for it, But I did that for, I think, 3 years. You could charge them 10 now, seriously. And then you could upsell them, vacuuming included. You want waxing, high detailing, all this stuff, $30, $50 a job. Whatever it takes, you can do it. And people in the neighborhood, they want to help a kid who's trying to get a start because they want to support the community. If some kid arrived on my door and said, "Can I wash your car for $10?" I'd be like, "You go for it, man. You are on the right track." So there are things you can do. You don't have to just like remain defeated, like, oh well, I can't work, what am I supposed to do? You can do things. Just look around. Obviously, again, I'm relating this to myself, and I live in Australia. I know other people that live in India and other places. Your story is obviously different. I don't understand, if somebody was in Indonesia or something, how hard it is to earn $200. I don't know. I'm just talking about it according to my view account. The majority are from America and Europe, so you can do this, guys. All right, now some of you are watching this and you're thinking, yeah, but that's all anecdotal. Anecdotal. Basically, all this stuff, it could very easily be flipped, right? There are some paid courses which are awful, and they are teaching you the wrong stuff. They're not giving you help, and they're making you lose motivation. And there are some free courses which are fantastic, right? So there are some free courses which are actually better than paid stuff. There's a whole plethora of YouTube videos and people online that are giving away stuff, and it's honestly like industry standard. It is the best knowledge, and they're giving it away for free. At the same time though, there are paid websites where you can learn by paying. So you've got the Gnomon Workshop, which is where that character creation course came from. They only hire artists and tutors that have worked in the industry. So people from DreamWorks, Pixar, Disney, they're the ones creating the tutorials, which means that, and that's the reason that's so important, is because when you're working in an industry and you're a part of a team, you can't do things the incorrect way or the time-consuming way, because somebody will be like, "Why are you doing it like that, dude? You got to hurry up. You got to do it like this. This is the fast way to do it." So you learn so much just by being around, in that space. So that's why industry standard is so important when it comes to tutors. So you've got, Gnomon Workshop, you've got Learn Squared, which I haven't tried, but I can see they got some really nice stuff. You've got Gumroad now, which is, by the way, I think over the next few years, you're going to start seeing a lot of really high quality stuff on there, because a lot of artists who, really good artists, they previously would never sell a tutorial because they don't know how to. The whole, putting up a store and accepting payments is so time consuming they wouldn't bother. They're now putting their stuff on Gumroad. And specifically Blender stuff, you got CG Cookie, which will teach you a whole bunch of Blender stuff just for a flat monthly fee. I can't remember what it is, but there are a whole bunch of websites. So there's free stuff, which is awesome and better than paid stuff. And then you got paid stuff, which is awesome and also better than some free stuff. So how do you decide? There are a few questions that I ask myself whenever I'm in that situation of free versus paid for training material, to decide whether or not to pursue it. Okay, so here are 5 questions that I ask. Number 1, does the instructor have industry experience? So have a look at who the instructor is and check if they've actually worked and in some form in the industry before. You can have a look at their portfolio, their resume, whatever it is, and that is going to be a huge tick if they have that, for the reasons that I just mentioned. They're going to be teaching you the correct method, so that's a huge tick. Number 2, could you see their work appearing on the front page of ArtStation? So this is just checking that the tutor's level is at the benchmark, the industry benchmark. Because if it's not, like if it's down here or something like that, they might be teaching you a lazy method, or they might not be teaching you adequate attention to detail, or something like that. You might just be learning something which is like a red herring. They'll lead you down this direction, which is actually not important. So you want to make sure that their portfolio level is actually at a standard which is acceptable. So just make a judge call yourself, go to the front page of ArtStation, the trending section, and just compare it to their portfolio. If you couldn't see it fitting in there, ask yourself whether or not that's worth following the course. Thirdly, and this isn't always an option, but check what the reviewers or the commenters say for that course. Because sometimes I've looked at some courses that look good, but then the reviewers say like, "Oh, don't buy it. It was good content, but it was so painfully delivered and so boring." Then I know I'm not going to buy it, right? Because I know that's important to me, and I know that I can't watch something which is just going to drain my motivation. So sometimes the comments can tell you stuff. And then finally, how does all this compare to the free alternative? So have a look at the free stuff and do this same judgment on the free stuff, on the YouTube tutorials, whatever it is that you're looking at. And then weigh it up whether which one is better. And then finally, a 5th question, and this is what I mentioned in my earlier video about advice for beginners, which if you want to have a look in the comments, you can watch that video, in the description. But it's important that you establish what your learning goal is before you go chasing something. Like sometimes you see a course like how to model a car and you're like, "Oh, that looks so good. I'm gonna watch it, or I'm gonna pay for it," right? But sometimes, like if you only actually want to do that as a job or in the future, like there's not really any point in you following that. So just check. I throw that in there just to remind you that not everything needs to be watched, because there's more content that you'll ever be able to watch online. You've got to set up a filter for the stuff that you do watch. So check before you buy a character course. If you want to be an environmental artist, why were you actually trying to do a character course? I'm not saying it's not good to learn new things outside of your fields, of course, but just check you're putting the attention where it needs to be. Okay, so that's for training. When it comes to models, plugins, or materials, you can apply the same sort of thinking. So imagine you're making a lounge room scene and you've got a couch in the corner there. You want to decide whether it makes sense to purchase a model or whether it makes sense to model it yourself. Okay, so the first question you want to ask yourself is, how many hours would it take me to recreate this model by myself? And is there a better use of my time? And this is a huge trap beginners fall into, because I remember I did it myself when I was a beginner. I thought, like, I can't be proud of the finished result unless I made everything myself. But the problem with that is that you're not expected to make everything yourself. And if you try to, instead of finishing, say, interiors, instead of at the end of the year making 20 interiors, you're going to make one because you modeled every little piece, okay? And oftentimes there is a better use of your time. It's better to learn, the composition or color and lighting and all the stuff that comes with assembling a scene from scratch. It's better for you to do that than to model the legs of the chair right down to the little piece at the bottom. Like, that stuff is so tedious, and it's not going to give you the best bang for your buck in terms of hours spent looking at it. Now, there are times, though, that it's important to your learning goal to learn how to do it manually. Okay, so say you actually wanted to be a furniture modeler in the future, or maybe you're just really interested in that, or you want to learn sculpting, all that stuff. Maybe you look at the couch and you go, yeah, you know what? Even though this would probably take me 20 hours to do it myself, and I can purchase it on TurboSquid for $20, obviously it would make more sense to purchase it than put that time in it. However, if I'm going to learn something out of this, and that's important to me, then it could be important just to do it yourself so that you learn the process yourself. So there are times when if it's in your learning goal that you actually do that. And that's also why, by the way, I say, if you haven't watched it, check out my video on advice for beginners. But I talk about why it's important to establish at the start what your learning goal is. Because there's so much information in the world. Like, you're never going to be able to watch every tutorial online. Even if you sat down and that's all you had to do was watch videos in prison, let's say, you would never finish because there's more being made whilst you're making. I don't think you'd ever get to the end. There's just a continuous, infinite cycle of tutorials. You'll never get through it. So you have to establish for yourself a filter, a way to figure out what you're actually going to watch and what you're not going to watch. So that's why having a learning goal, something that you're really focused on, that way it enables you to put blinkers on and only look at what's actually important. And another question to ask is, if you're assembling a scene, and this is really important, like if you're making a city scene or something like that, the reason those scenes are so hard and the reason that seemingly almost nobody wants to make them is because there's so many objects. Now, you're not expected to make every single object yourself. There's too many elements in the real world to make every single thing. You can, and it's totally fine to do this. You can assemble a scene from models that you've bought, and then you can say in the description you purchased the models from TurboSquid or whatever it is. That's fine, because that's a portfolio piece. It's showing that you understand composition or the lighting or level layout or whatever it is that you're trying to establish in it. That's totally fine. So you don't have to make everything yourself, especially stuff that's just in the background. If you've got a car, and the car is the thing that you're showing off, don't purchase the car, because that's obviously like the hero element, the focus of the scene. So it makes sense to make that yourself. But everything else, if it's just background noise, who cares? You can purchase it. It's totally fine. Yeah, so that's the end of the video, essentially. And I want to end on one thought to end on, and that's that the upfront cost is often the cheapest part of the equation. When it comes to making that decision, should I go free or should I go paid? That upfront cost, don't look at that dollar value and think like, oh, paid compared to free. Obviously, I'm going to choose free. There's so much more involved in it, that all those little variables you got to think about. So try to think about that the next time you're in that decision. So if this video helped you, please give it a thumbs up so that other people can find it as well. Thank you for watching, and if you got any questions that you want me to answer in a future video, for example, put them in the comments, and yeah, That's it. Now you can look at all these little thumbnails up on the screen. Think which one do you want to watch next, or any at all. Bye.